Welcome, everybody, to another episode of the Internationalie podcast. Before we start, let me talk a little bit about the podcast. So, the Internationalie podcast is going to be a space where different international students, prospective ones as well as current international students, could get a glimpse into the life of international students in the US or abroad. This is season 3, and I'm so excited to welcome my guest, Maëlle. Welcome to the show, Maëlle.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Yes, of course. So before we start, let me talk a little bit about my guest. So Maëlle is from a small city in the east of France, near the border with Belgium, Luxembourg, and Germany. She's very passionate about dancing and gender equality. Maëlle studied political science and international public management at Sciences Po in France and did a 1 year exchange program at the University of British Columbia in Vancouver, Canada. Currently, she works in a think tank focusing on Africa EU relations, where she conducts research and analysis mainly on conflicts, peace building, and gender equality. Would you like to add more to your bio?
That's pretty comprehensive, but just maybe a little disclaimer that my year abroad was a bit different to being an international student and going to study for 2 or 3 years abroad, because for me it was a year that was planned within my studies, but where the grades didn't count. I just needed to pass or fail. So
Mm.
that lifted also a lot of stress off my chest. And this made
Mm.
it more of a year of discovery and where I
Mm-hmm.
could focus more on other things than academics.
Mm.
Um, so yeah, something to keep in mind that yeah, I didn't have the necessarily the same struggles that other
Mm-hmm.
international students might have because I had a bit less pressure academically.
Mm. That makes sense. Yeah, thank you for the clarification there. Um, so as the topic of our episode is dealing with shyness, what is the first thing that comes to your mind when you hear the word shyness?
Yeah, I think it's quite a difficult question because it's not so clear often what shyness is, and I feel like there are a lot of misconceptions about it. Um, so, for example, people may think, oh, there are only a few people that have very intense shyness, but in fact, all of us have a little bit of shyness that we learn to deal with throughout our life. It's very normal to have. And then for some people, it can get more intense, and that's when it becomes a problem because then you can't live your life fully because of this shyness, and it can really create barriers between you and the people you want to speak to, the things you want to achieve or experience. Um, and I also think we need to make a difference between shyness and being an introvert, because
Mm,
some people are just introverts and they like being alone, they like
yeah,
silence,
yeah.
and that's they are a bit more quiet, and that's
Mm-hmm.
totally also normal, and that's not necessarily being shy. So
Right.
someone speaking is not necessarily someone being shy.
Well, that's a very important distinction I think you made there. I mean, for me personally, when I think about the word shyness,
Mm,
immediately I think about someone who's, having trouble expressing themselves in a confident way. And especially I think of it in a group setting, not, individually, but like in a group setting. Like, are you the
mm,
person who raises your hand, especially in a classroom, to talk? Um, to your professor, or if you have answers, is your
mm,
first instinct to share your ideas and your thoughts. And so I think
yeah,
of the person being shy as someone who kind of refrains from being the first person to do a lot of
mm,
things. And I'm so excited to talk about this topic, honestly, because as an international student, and for you, the semester, I mean the year that you spent in Canada, I'm sure you've seen
mhm,
this with, like, interacting with other students. You form new friend groups, you have new
mhm.
classmates, and so I wanted to ask you, so when you grew up as a kid, were you a shy person, or was that something that developed later in your life?
It really developed later. I was, when I was a child, I would be very social. I was even a bit of a child leader.
Oh,
When I was
okay.
younger, I
Uh-huh.
liked to come up with ideas and get everyone to follow my idea. And it
Mm-hmm.
really, well, it kind of started manifesting at some point when I changed school. But then once I made friends, it went away again. But then during my teenage years, it increased gradually, I would say. Um, and then, yeah, when I was in high school, that was kind of the peak where I really
Mm-hmm.
felt like it was taking away from my life.
Mm-hmm.
As I was saying, the shyness for me kind of peaked in high school and the beginning of uni. Um, but then it also started gradually getting better around that time, and especially during my year abroad, that really helped for some reasons.
Mm-hmm.
And what I wanted to say is also that it's really not fixed, at least for me, because today I don't really deal with the issue anymore. Like it may happen very, very occasionally, but it's mostly gone. So it can really just be a wave
Mm-hmm.
throughout your life, I think.
Yeah, yeah. I think that's very interesting how you said that, you're very, confident when you were a child, but then, the shyness kind of came later on. Because when I think about my own experience, so as a kid, I wasn't really shy. I was actually the person who was, in front. When the teacher asks, "Oh, who wants to read this passage?" I would like raise my hand, and like that was when I was a
Hmm.
kid. And then
Yeah.
very interestingly, like similarly to yours, when high school came, and then college, and then you're immersed in this new environment and this new atmosphere, and like everything is new, and like you don't know your place in that new environment, so you kind of tend to second guess yourself. And so
Mm,
I was maybe not as not as, I don't want to say not as confident, but at the same time, like I didn't want to be the first person to raise my hand in the classroom, because I was like, oh, maybe other people have other thoughts, let me listen, you know what I mean? So
yeah.
I think that was very interesting to see, because for me, because I know a lot of people who um and like they were shy since they were kids, and they're still shy. But then
Mm,
some other people, they're not.
yeah.
But then I wanted to go back to the point you made earlier about the difference between shyness and being an introvert, and I wanted you to expand more on what you meant about that.
Yeah. So I think being an introvert is being a person that just needs alone time to recharge, and alone time is the moment when you recharge. Whereas for an extrovert, it's being social and being with people that recharges you, that makes you feel yeah, more energized.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so introvert people may spend more time alone and may be more quiet because that's a way for them to recharge. But that doesn't mean that they're afraid to speak. That doesn't mean that there is something mentally blocking them from speaking. Whereas shyness, you may want to speak, you may have an opinion, something to say, but
Mm-hmm.
something is making it very difficult for you to do that.
Mm. Yeah, no, that makes sense, because in the context of being an international student, I guess like personality wise, like you can be an introvert,
Hmm.
but then at the same time you can be confident in a group setting where you were more comfortable talking with your friends, or like even new people. So going back to like your experience as an exchange student, how
Mm.
did you think, like you being shy, why was that a problem? Did it prevent you from certain opportunities, or what? How was that experience for you?
Um, so I think is exchange was mostly a period for me where it got better. So before going, it was of course quite scary because I knew, well, it had already started being a bit easier with my shyness because, for example, I had found a group of friends with whom I felt very safe, very, comfortable. So that's already a big help, because often, at least for me, shyness was linked to the fear of being judged. So I was
Mm,
already going a bit better before exchange. And when I arrived to exchange, of course, it was kind of daunting because I didn't really know anyone, and I
yeah.
would have to speak to people. But the thing about it is that you're just thrown into the experience, and you just have to talk to people. You don't have a choice unless you want to spend your whole year by yourself. You just
Yeah.
have to. um,
Yeah.
and I think it actually, the whole setting of it really helped because we were all
Mm,
exchange students. We
mm,
all arrived around the same time. Everyone wanted to meet others. So there was no fear of going to speak to someone and then being like, well, why are you speaking to me? It really was.
mm,
So it helped me a lot. And what helped me a lot as well is that it was kind of a new beginning.
mhm,
No one knew me, so they didn't know that I was shy, for example. So I could just be not shy. I don't know,
mm,
there were all these things that actually made it.
yeah.
Yeah, shyness wasn't really a struggle for me during exchange, but it's more exchange helped me overcome it, I would say, because it
Nice.
showed me it can be easy. Like it
Mm,
was a bit of a shift in my brain of actually this isn't so hard. I can do this every day. Yeah.
mm. Yeah. Yeah, that's so interesting because I also kind of relate to that because it really depends on the kinds of people that you surround yourself with. And
Mm,
if you're in an environment where you're surrounded with, supportive people and you feel more comfortable sharing your thoughts and your opinions and your ideas,
yeah.
as opposed to like, being in a space where you think someone is going to judge you based on what you're going to say, so then that maybe um inhibits you from sharing your opinion so freely. So I think college, is a place where you get to meet so many different people from all over the world. And as you
Mm,
said, like what you mentioned earlier was really funny. Like they didn't know I was shy, so like I could be confident, because I
yeah.
think that's very, very important, because college is a place where you get to redefine yourself, because your high school
Yeah.
self, nobody really, especially if you're new there, nobody really knows your past. So I guess you could redefine who you are as a
Yeah.
person in this new environment. Would you agree with that?
Yes, I agree. And it's not like your past doesn't exist and it's no longer influencing you, but in specific moments, you can really make the first step
Mm-hmm.
and realize that it's possible and that the fact that you couldn't before doesn't mean you can't now.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, so yeah, it's not like I don't want to sell this idea that it's so easy, you can just start all over again.
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
No, no,
yeah.
no. But it's really an opportunity to shift it
Mm-hmm.
around a little bit, I think.
Yeah, thank you for sharing that, because I think for a lot of people, I guess, even if you don't identify as a person who is shy, there are, as you said earlier, there are moments in your life where you're
Mm,
like, you second guess yourself, or like you're not too forward. So I guess in those moments, I think it's really important to remember, to surround yourself with people who are supportive, and
mm,
so then you could share your opinion more freely. Um, so my next question for you is, why do you think it's important for people to really work on sharing their opinions more freely, and maybe, even if you're shy, it's okay, but at the same time, do you think it prohibits you from participating in certain things? Like, why is it a problem that, if you're shy?
mm. Well, I guess again, it depends on the scale. If you're a little bit
Mhm.
shy, it's not a problem. But if you because I think sometimes people think they see a shy person and they think, oh, maybe this person is just doesn't have a strong personality or strong opinions. But if you do
Mhm.
have strong opinions, but you're afraid to say them for fear of judgment or yeah, fear of people not liking you, things like that, then that's the issue.
Mm,
And I think it depends also on types of shyness. Like
Mm,
for me, it was more related to that, which also maybe is why it came more during teenagehood.
mm,
Maybe people who are just shy from childhood, like for whole their life, is a bit different from for them. So I can't speak to that, but I feel like for me it was really I wanted to
mm-hmm.
make more friends. I wanted to speak with more people,
Yeah.
but I there was some fear stopping me. So
Mm,
it made just sense to want to speak out. And another reason why it's important to give your opinions and to also, yeah, say what you think is that it encourages others to do it.
mm,
Especially if they see that it's difficult for you, but you say it anyways,
yeah.
they're gonna want to do the same. They're also going to want to share. So,
Yeah, that's a very important point you raised there, because sometimes people might think, it's not really a problem if you're shy and you're quiet all the time. Like, especially like when you think about it in a social setting or in an academic setting. So for instance,
mm,
if you're in a classroom, and the professor asks a question and you have the answer, but
mm,
you're like, maybe this might not be the right answer, or maybe someone else might answer it, and then you
yeah,
kind of rob yourself up of the opportunity to share your ideas and thoughts with the classroom.
mm,
And
yeah,
people might have different opinions than you, and then you might have different opinions than other people, but by sharing your opinion, you are challenging what is acceptable, and you're bringing a different perspective to the table. So I think also that's an important part of sharing your opinion. And but I also want to like highlight that it is okay to be shy. There's nothing wrong with it, but at the same time,
mm,
I have seen it in people where, for instance, if it's a thought that I had in my mind, even in a classroom, but I didn't raise my hand, and someone else raised their hand and answered that question, and I was like,
mm,
I was thinking the exact same thing. It's
yeah,
kind of frustrating. Would you
yeah,
agree with that?
yeah, definitely. And I think a lot of people have that. Because a lot of people are afraid to be the first person raising their
Mm-hmm.
hand, even though they
Mm-hmm.
know the answer.
Mm-hmm.
And sometimes it can even be frustrating because the person that does answer might not give
Mm-hmm.
such a good answer. And then you think, well,
Yeah.
I could have done it better. Um,
Exactly.
uh, but I think it's also, um, well, for women, for example, we
Mm-hmm.
tend to not take risks as much. So
Mm.
we're a bit like, if I don't have the perfect answer to give, all well formulated and super prepared, then I'm not gonna say it.
Yeah.
But of course that almost never happens.
Yeah.
um, so I have also had moments where I thought, okay, I'm going to participate, but then I would start to note down first what I would want to say and prepare, and then it was too late. The moment had passed.
Ah,
So
yeah.
I think, yeah, you just need to, yeah, it's also linked to perfectionism and wanting to give a great answer, whereas really you should just
Mm.
start talking. But it's,
Yeah.
yeah, it's difficult.
Yeah. Yeah, I thank you for sharing that, and I really like that you added the gender component to this conversation, because I think it's a big part of it. I mean, for me personally, I went to an all women's college.
Mm,
However, there were students from other colleges who used to take classes in our school, and then we also used to take classes at other colleges. So we had boys in our classrooms, and I
mm,
also remember moments where they used to make comments or like answer questions from the professor, and I was like, wait, really? Like, that's an opinion? And then it's also like very funny, because I specifically remember whenever the professor asks, so what do you think about this, and then people would start with the sentence, oh, it is interesting to think,
bullshit thing a
yeah,
bit.
yeah. And like, even if they don't have any coherent thought or like a well formulated opinion, they would still
Mm,
share whatever was in their mind. And I think
mm,
that's very important, because that's when you practice the art of speaking and articulating
yeah.
your thoughts. And if you don't have that practice every day in the classroom, I think it's very important to translate it later on into your life. Would you agree?
Yeah, yeah. I think it's well, I agree that it's very gendered. I could see it also in my classrooms at
Mm-hmm.
university. also on
Mhm.
exchange. Like I think
Mhm.
everywhere it's still the case. Um, and I think we really have more difficulties improvising also. Well, some
Mhm.
people can do it really well, but I think
Yeah.
especially for shy people or perfectionist people, you feel
Mhm.
like you have to be so prepared and in control.
Yeah. Yeah.
So to answer right away to something
Yeah.
is very scary.
Yeah.
But it's like you can really train yourself to do it. So
Exactly. Exactly. And they are like improv classes, right? Like people could,
yes, yeah.
could take if you know that the thing that you want to work on. There are a lot of
Mm,
things that you can do actively to really help you, hone those public speaking skills. Um but now,
mhm,
like, like we talked about the academic context, like let's talk about the social context. So in a
yeah.
social setting, gathering of friends, new people, old people, like, old friends, new friends, how do you develop that um confidence, I guess, to strike up a conversation with a stranger, or to talk with your friends and to be social, if you identify as a person who is shy?
Mm. Um, I think one component to it, as you mentioned before, is that it's much more scary when it's in a group. When
Mm,
it's one to one, I didn't have so much trouble with that
mm,
because, well, the person is still receiving the information you're giving. There's
mhm.
still maybe a judgment, but um, what's scary in a group is that you start talking and everyone else shuts up and looks at you and listens to you. And that can
Yeah.
feel very intimidating for people who are shy.
Mm,
So I think going step by step can also be helpful, like, for example, starting with smaller groups and
mm,
then following these people that you already know into bigger groups.
mm,
Um, can be helpful. You also, if you're at a party, for example, you don't have to go
mhm,
speak to everyone at the same time. You can also join a group and be a
mhm,
more quiet presence in that group, and at some
mhm.
point start speaking.
Yeah.
Um, but it's also, I feel like there is no perfect way to do it super gradually. At
Yeah.
some point, you just have to just throw yourself at it.
Mhm.
And
Mm.
for example, in exchange, at the beginning, you arrive, there are
Yeah.
people talking, and you just have to go and talk to someone.
Right.
So I
Right.
think it's also just telling yourself, okay, like everyone is doing it. It seems like you just have to do it at some point.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so I feel like for me, what helped me was making this a habit, like forcing myself to do it
Mhm.
and forcing myself to do it more and more often.
Yeah.
And then it becomes normal. And the
Right.
inconfort kind of goes away.
Mm. And I want to share a story here because I have seen that. Because you remember how we met? Do you want to share that
Hmm.
story?
Oh yeah. So we met at a conference,
Uh-huh.
and that is also a place where shyness can really come up because you
Exactly.
normally you're supposed to go and talk to people, do some
Mhm.
networking, try to find
Mhm.
people who are there are working on,
Mhm.
etc. And I also didn't go with anyone else from my organizations, so I
Mhm.
was just walking around, looking around, feeling like, oh, who can I speak to? No, no, no.
Right.
And then, yeah, I saw you and Reina, another girl, and
Yeah.
I just went up to them and asked, "Hello, can I join?"
Exactly.
Then that's it.
Exactly.
It doesn't have to be hard. Um,
Yeah. And that's what I wanted to talk about, because I remember that moment, so this was a conference, I think, that happened just a couple of months ago. And
mhm.
I was sitting with a person that I met at the conference, and we're talking, and then you came up and you're like, hi, can I join? And we were like, yeah, sure, of course. And then we started
Yeah,
talking,
yeah.
and we ended up having dinner, and then we ended up having a really great conversation about what we do. And it
Mm,
was at that moment that I realized that if you hadn't come up to us, we
mm.
wouldn't never have met. Have you
Yeah,
have
yeah.
you thought about that? Like,
Yeah, yeah,
you know,
that's true. And now,
literally.
yeah, yeah, no, it's very ironic also the fact that a moment of not being shy led me to be in a podcast where I'm talking about that topic.
Exactly. So I think it's like highly, highly relevant because this is like the perfect
Yeah.
example to showcase if you challenge yourself and if you take the first step, you never
Yeah.
know who you're going to meet, the background that they're going to have. You never know, you might have something in common with that person. And i
Mm.
i just want to say, like, I really admire that you did that, because I didn't do that at the conference. Like, people were coming up to me. I never went to like someone, but I think that's
Yeah.
something that I'm also learning. It's like,
Mm.
because when you go to like conferences or like places where you have to network, I think it takes a little bit of an extra nudge on
Yeah,
your behalf
definitely.
to make that
Mm.
first step. And then after you do that, the rest is it's very easy, because people, they are already prepared to talk about themselves, and everyone loves talking about themselves. So then you already open that door. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
um
people are never gonna say, if you ask, hello, can I join? Even if they don't want you to join, they would never say,
Say no.
no, we're busy.
Exactly.
So you're really not risking much.
Yeah, exactly. So yeah, kudos to you. So I'm gonna take that to heart as well. Like, for the next time
Yeah.
I'm like in a space where I don't know anyone, I'm just gonna take up that opportunity and just introduce myself and then strike up a conversation, because that's also one thing in college. you know it's like,
Mm.
4 years of your life, and especially as an international student, you might not know the culture of the school. You might not know, the friends that you went to high school with are not there with you. So,
Yeah.
you are kind of placed in a situation where people already are ready to talk about themselves, and they're ready to be your friends.
Yeah,
So everyone is
definitely.
in that, environment where people are nice and friendly. So you really can't mess up there. Would you agree?
Yeah, yeah, definitely. I think it's already the case at the beginning of your studies overall, but
Mm.
especially if you're an international student, you're arriving in a new place and you have the opportunity to meet with other international students.
Mm-hmm.
Of course, they're gonna want to meet new people, speak with you.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and in general, I think that anyone that shares something with you, whether it's just sharing an experience or
Yeah.
sharing an interest. For example, if you go to a student association that
Mm-hmm.
you're interested in,
Yeah.
then it just makes sense that people are going to want to talk to you.
Exactly.
So, but I think sometimes we also know deep down that people wouldn't reject us, but it's an
Mm.
irrational fear. So that's why you also need to, yeah, repetition is important. You need
Right.
yeah, become used to going up to people.
Yeah. And I think this goes also hand in hand with like how confident you are, striking up a conversation with a stranger. Because I know, like, some people, they find it very daunting to, go up to a stranger and have a conversation.
Mm.
And I know it could be like very scary to like talk to someone you've never talked to before. So I wanted to ask you, like, how did that shift happen for you, like, between high school and college, where you developed that
Mm.
capacity of really leaning into your confident side, and then talking to strangers? Like, what was the shift that happened, and what really helped you present yourself in a way that's confident?
Mm-hmm. Well, I think so many things. First of all, the fact that it was very gradual. So
Mm-hmm.
already in high school, it wasn't all bad. Like I was trying to go up to people. I did
Mm-hmm.
theater actually in high school, which
Ah,
was very
nice.
difficult for me, but I still did it.
Yeah.
So I always resisted it. Yeah, I was shy, I was bothered by it, but I never accepted it and thought, okay, I'm just like this.
Mm.
So I think that helped. um I think what helps also is to shift your focus from yourself to the other person that you're speaking to. Because if you're focused on yourself, you're going to think about every mistake you could make,
Mm.
mistake
Quote
in
unquote, yeah.
brackets, yeah, quote
Mm-hmm.
unquote.
Mm-hmm.
You're going to think about what they're going to think of you. In many ways, you're really in your head, and it's quite a self centered kind of thing.
Mm-hmm.
But if you're actually just looking at the other person and asking yourself, well, what do I want to learn about this person?
Yeah.
then you stop thinking about your shyness and your fears.
Mm,
Um,
mm,
so I think
mm,
that can really help. And
mm.
I also think that's why it was better in university, because when you're a
Yeah.
teenager, you're
Yeah.
more insecure, you're more thinking
Yeah.
about your
Yeah.
appearance, what people think of
Mm,
you, all of that.
mm,
Um, so yeah, I think cultivating curiosity and interest towards others
mm.
really help. And when you're an international student, that comes naturally because you are
Yeah.
surrounded by people from other countries and places. So it's so
Exactly.
interesting to speak to them.
Yeah.
Um, so yeah, I guess again, it's the idea of brushing aside this thing of, oh, but what are we going to talk about?
Mm-hmm.
Because you have very, if it's international students, you can ask, where are you from? And
Exactly.
then that's such a conversation starter.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I don't know, you can do these very cheesy thing, or how do you say
Yeah.
this in your language? Like,
Exactly.
you know,
Exactly. Mm-hmm.
so
Mm-hmm.
it just comes naturally if you get started, usually.
Yeah, yeah. No, I totally agree with that because even for me when I think about my own self, I think college was a place where I met so many different people and at the same time it really creates a curiosity inside of you. It's like I really want to learn more about this person, about their background, about where they're from, about the kinds of
Hmm.
food they eat, the culture that they have, because that was very
Hmm.
fascinating. And so whether you like it or not, you're going to be in a space where everything is new and the things that you're used to, the people that you're used to are not there anymore. So
Yeah.
for me personally, honestly, college was a place that also where I learned how to confidently share my story as well, because a lot of times people would ask you, just like you said, where you're from. And so you kind of get used to explaining to people where you're from, and at the end of your college career, you have a part of your identity and you've embraced it,
Mm.
and you're like, oh, this is where I'm from, this is so it kind of becomes like a what's it called, like when you do something over and over again, you kind of get used to it, and so like that shyness, I
Yeah.
guess, slowly fades away.
Yeah. Yeah.
Mm.
No, that makes a lot of sense. It's exactly whether you're shy or not. Um, it's yeah, this experience of being an international is going to teach you how to present yourself to people.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and really own it.
Yeah, yeah. So as we're ending our conversation, do you have any advice for current international students, for prospective international students who are dealing with the topic of shyness?
Yes. So I think this whole conversation was a bit filled with little advice, but
Mm-hmm.
just to repeat it, I think you have to go towards what's uncomfortable, um, and do it repeatedly, even though it's difficult, because it will get easier with time. And at some point, your brain will just shift and it will just no longer be uncomfortable at all. And
Yeah.
this is bound to happen. This is the case with anything. If you do it a lot, then you just get used to it. We're very
Mm-hmm.
adaptable.
Right.
So that is one. I think also, yeah, shifting your focus again from yourself to the other person
Mm-hmm.
is very helpful. Surrounding yourself with people that will make you feel safe and not judged, that helps a lot. That also helped me a lot when I was on exchange, because I made this friend group that felt like a little family. So
Mm.
obviously um, there was no fear of speaking out. And if it's a small group, it can also help. Again, it's less intimidating than big groups.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and lastly, something that I didn't really do myself, and I wish I did, is to tell people that you're struggling with it. Um,
Mm.
because when you're dealing with it, you kind of take it as a given in your life. and you feel like it might always be a factor in your life. So you're not really, it's not like this specific problem that you want to discuss with your friends to see how you can fix it. You kind of feel like you have to deal with it by
Yeah.
yourself.
Yeah.
But not actually. People might really help you. For
Mm-hmm.
example, by telling you, "Oh well, I actually didn't notice that you were shy. You seem confident." Things
Yeah.
like this can help, because then you're like,
Mm.
"Oh well, maybe I'm making this bigger in my head than it really is."
Mm. Mm.
Um, so yeah, really speaking to people or friends or family, I think that's an important one.
Yeah, yeah. I think that's a very interesting point that you bring up, Mel, because like when you say like, telling people oh, I'm actually shy, like people tend to be very understanding, and when you're
Mm,
vulnerable as well like that, people, you might be surprised. Someone might say, "Oh, I'm actually like also very shy, and these are some things that I've done to help me overcome it." And so it could
yeah.
also create a space for you to learn from other people's experiences as well when you openly share what you're struggling with. Or, as you said, it might be all in your head. You might
Mm,
be thinking that you're shy all this time, but then the way that other people perceive you might be different from the way you perceive yourself.
mm.
Yeah. Is there anything else you want to add to this conversation that maybe I didn't ask you?
Um, no, I think we
Yeah.
covered it pretty good.
Yeah. All right. All right. So just like from my side, I mean, the advice I would have for people is, especially as an international student, I think that's the time where you would meet people from, as I mentioned, I keep saying this all over again, but like you meet people from all over the world, and you become curious about where they're from, and like,
Mm,
it's the opportunity where people are generally nice, and they're, you're not going to meet people who are like very, very mean. So take
mm,
this opportunity, to practice, talking to strangers, communicating with people you've never met before, because honestly, you never know how that
mm.
connection is going to help you in the future, and the network that you're going to make there, it's going to help you down the line. And so I guess I just want to, people to just experiment, 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 just challenge
Yeah.
yourself, talk to people. And through time, you will become confident in sharing your thoughts and articulating your opinion. Would you agree with that?
Yeah, definitely. And I think, well, shyness can prevent you from living your life fully,
Mm-hmm.
but
Mm-hmm.
especially if you're an international student and you're on exchange, it would be such a pity to miss out on all these opportunities.
Yeah.
So, so it's not easy, but it's really a great opportunity to start doing it. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. 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 Yeah. And with that, we end a wonderful conversation of the Internationally podcast. Please make sure to go follow the official Instagram page at Internationally by Ruth, that is LIE, and send an email with your questions or concerns about being an international student to internationallybyruth@gmail.com. Thank you so much, Maëlle. This was wonderful.
Thanks a lot. Yeah, I also really enjoyed it. I feel like
Yeah.
I could talk about it for longer, but this was
Yeah.
really good. Yeah.
Yeah, thank you so much for being a guest. Thank you again, everybody, for tuning in today. I hope you have a lovely week ahead of you, and take care of yourselves, everyone. Bye.